Yo, what up? My name is L Hug, and we're here in my new studio that I built over the last couple weeks. And I want to do a sample breakdown because I released a new pack on Polyphonic Music Library just last week, and the feedback has been amazing. And thanks to everybody who bought the pack. So first of all, thank you to everybody. Um, there was one particular sample that everybody kind of loved and pointed out to me. So I want to use that and do a full breakdown, show you all the tracks, the instruments used, the processing, and yeah. So let's jump right into it. So yeah, that's it. I think the final sample that is in the pack is, I think, one half step higher or maybe half step lower. I'm not sure about that. So let's start with the drums. I kind of programmed this simple drum rhythm that is the basis of the whole track and that I used to kind of play the piano over it. So let's look at that first. So this is one group and it has all the drums on in there. So we have the hi-hat, the kick, and the ride. So let's listen again. So if we look at the processing for these tracks, on the individual channels, there's actually nothing going on. But then on the group, I have this UAD V76 preamp emulation, which just gives it some distortion. Then we have this RC20 on there, and it uses one of my presets that I released on Minta Foundry, the RC20 preset pack. So if you want to check that out. Now let's listen again. If you listen closely, it's actually pretty obvious. You can hear there's a delay going on. So where does that come from? Because it's not on the individual tracks, it's not on the group, on the drum group. So where is it? Actually, it's on the master channel. So the master processing on this sample is super important. So before actually looking at the other tracks, I want to look at the mastering, the processing on the master channel, because this changes the sound of that sample so much. First plugin we have on the master channel is RC20. It just adds a little bit of noise, and the ducking is all the way up. So the ducking kind of acts as a sidechain compressor on the noise. So when there's a lot of music going on, the noise is pushed down, and when the more open parts come, the noise comes up. So this is a really interesting effect that I like to use with the vinyl tone on the RC20. So the next plugin is Wolf Compressor. This has become one of my favorite plugins actually. It doesn't do much in this case. All it does, it adds some compression and then just dials it in like at 15%. So that's basically, it doesn't do much. Then next we have this API EQ. If you know me, you know this is one of my favorite EQs. I like to use it for low cutting stuff and also boosting the highs. So that's what I use it in this case too. Now we have another instance of RC20 on there. Like the first RC20 on there was for the noise, and the second one is for just a tiny bit wobble on there. This is again one of my presets from the RC20 bank, and then I probably tweaked it a little. So it adds some width here, cut some of the lows, cut some of the highs to change the tone over here. So next up we have Echo Boy Jr. And Echo Boy Jr. in this case is probably what gives that sample that whole vibe with the delays. So if we listen to the drums without this plugin and then with, you can hear the difference immediately. So without and with. Then next up is just this EQ that I use to cut some of the 2K frequency over here. So now that we know what's on the master channel, we can keep going in the individual tracks and look at what's going on here. So next up is the piano. So there's actually two tracks of piano. I recorded this with the grand piano behind me. It's a Yamaha C3 piano. And I used a Reslow ribbon mic on it to record it. The microphone was placed pretty far away, so you can kind of hear the room sound, which I really like in those soul type samples, to have the room sound. So let's listen to both tracks at the same time, because the second track is basically just a lower note that I layered below. So yeah, let's go. With the drums. So the piano, same as the drums. There's this preamp on there that I love. And next up is this Ocean Way Studios, which gives it even more room that it already had. So this plugin is underrated. It's really difficult to use, in my opinion. But once you get to know it a little bit, it can add some pretty cool magic stuff to it. So definitely check that out. The way I use it in this case is in reverb mode. So there's two modes, remic mode and reverb mode. In this case I use reverb mode, and I just use the very close mics. So I mute the other channels, just this one, and pan it to the right and just dial it in a little bit. You can see it here. And then the reverb kind of sounds like it's on one side only, so that gives it a cool effect. Panning reverbs in general is heavily underrated, so you should try that out. Next up is the bass. Also with the V76 preamp on there. Alright, let's listen to the next track. The next track is called Bells, but actually what it is me playing on the vibraphone, but instead of using the mallet to play the vibraphone with the soft head, I kind of turned the mallet around and played with the wooden sticks on the vibraphone. So it gives it like a Glockenspiel type sound, but it sounds a bit different. So let's listen to the bass, the drums, the piano, and the Glockenspiel. So this is kind of the rhythm section, you know. Everything that comes now is kind of part of the top line melody, and it's played by different instruments at different times. So it starts with the guitar. So let's listen to the guitar solo. This is my Gibson guitar. I recorded it through the Vox AC30. I think it's an AC30 with a Wrestler ribbon mic to capture the sound, and added some EQ, just some low cutting. Then also added the Ocean Way Studios to give it some more room. Actually, I'm using the cabinet presets here. And this is one of my all-time favorite echo delays. So my two favorite echo delays are Echo Boy Jr. and EP34. It's actually the only delays that I use ever. You can hear how the guitar is panned to the left. So now we're going to jump all these tracks and go straight to the vocals. We're going to talk about those tracks too later on, but I want to show you the vocals because the way the top line melody enters in the beginning is the guitar layered with the vocals. So the vocals sound like a choir if we listen to it. But it's just one track. So the way I recorded this is I recorded a bunch of vocals, layered them. There's at least probably like 5 to 7 times the same vocal melody recorded. So there's already reverb on there because when I mixed the choir vocals, I added the plate reverb, distortion, compression, and then I ran everything through my tape deck, which is the Uher 4000 report monitor that I have over here. This tape machine gives it a super vintage sound that I absolutely love. I use this tape machine in every sample that I make, and most of the times I just use it to take one of the tracks that doesn't have enough texture to it, and I run that track through the tape back into my computer and then just use that recording. So that's what I did here. That's why you can't see all the individual stems. It's because I ran everything through the tape deck. Now let's look at the second section. I'm going to play the whole thing for you. So let's look at those 3 tracks over here. One is a voice that I recorded, and the other one is an actual flute, like a real flute recording. And then we also have a Mellotron instrument, which is also a flute. So let's listen to the flute recording first. So there's no processing on that track, and there's no processing on the vocal track either. But if you look at the group, which I call Ensemble because it's kind of like a couple people playing and singing together, so one vocalist and 2 people who play the flute, and you're going to see there's more instruments coming in later on. So I do the processing for the whole group as if everybody was standing in the same room playing at the same time. So if you look at the plugins on here, the Fairchild compressor is just compressing about -2 to -3 dB, and the API is just cutting out, like lowering some of those 125 hertz, 250 hertz frequencies. So all of them together sounds like this. So the vocal recording is not perfect. I'm not even gonna solo it because it's probably gonna sound like trash alone. But layered with the other instruments, it gives it this cool sound that you only get when you layer instruments. So if we keep going, let's jump this section for a second and go straight to this section here, where you can see there's another Mellotron instrument entering here, which sounds like this. So another flute, but it's higher pitched. So if we listen to those 2 flutes, you can kind of hear how they play 2 different melodies, but then come together in the end. So let's listen to the whole ensemble here. And with the rest of the sample, with everything we have heard so far, it sounds like this. There was one thing missing that I added just after that, and that is the strings. So let's listen to the strings solo first. And then one section later, there's another top note entering in the strings. So there's no processing on the strings, but if you want to know which bank this is the LA scoring strings. It's the only contact library that I use. It sounds incredible, and it's not even that expensive. So if you want to get cool like string sounds, that's the way to go. Let's listen to this section again. And now with the higher string note. So the last two tracks are kind of just things in the background going on. So in this case, I'm using the vibraphone to just add some cool things, cool fills in the end. So let's listen what that does. And this is something I want to point out. Look at how the vibraphone doesn't enter on the beat, but actually has some kind of small pickup bar. That's the kind of stuff that is going to make your samples sound much more like original songs, songs from the 60s or 70s, where not everything was on the grid and things would come in 2 beats before the bar. So it's just something to consider, that not everything has to start on the beat of the first bar of the loop, but it can start before or after. So on the vibraphone, we just have some Fairchild compression and some EQing, just taking out some of the mids over here. The last track is a guitar track that is super spacey. There's an EMT reverb on there, and it's at 100% wet. There's not many reverb plugins that sound good at 100% wet, but the MT140 by UAD definitely does. It doesn't sound as good as a real plate at 100% wet, but it's pretty close. Also, you can see the guitar is panned almost way to the left, so it's 40 to the left. So I think that's it. That's all the tracks, but I want to play you this section so you can hear what it does with the guitars here, and then with the vibraphone that enters on this pickup bar. So yeah, that's the whole sample. If you want to flip it, go to polyphonicmusiclibrary.com and buy the pack. There's also a stems option, so if you want to study the compositions, this one and the other ones, you can do so. Make sure to also check out the packs on mintalabs.com/foundry for the RC20 presets, the Mellotron expansion packs, the percussion packs and everything. There's a lot of stuff in the Polyphonic Music Library pack that is from those Minta Foundry packs, because those are the sounds that I use all the time. So I'm only putting out sound packs with sounds that I use myself, nothing else. So yeah, go check that out, and thanks for watching, and see you next time.